welcome to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? I'm Karen E. Osborne, and I am so glad you decided to come back and join us. I hope you've been enjoying it, that you've enjoyed the dramatic readings, you've enjoyed the art, you've enjoyed the laughter, and I know you're going to enjoy my guest today, Gail Olmsted. And I want you to hear a little. So she is, first of all, she's written 4 books, but prior to this one. Is that right, Gail? There was 4 books prior to
Yes.
this one?
Mhm.
Yes, and that this one is kind of a departure. Would you say that?
Definitely, definitely.
Yes, definitely. So she's going to tell us about her 4 books and her new one, but I love this description of her newest book. It's called Landscape of a Marriage, and it launches on July 29th. And it's a historical novel based on the lives of real people. A marriage of convenience leads to a life of passion and purpose, and a shared vision transforms the American landscape forever. Doesn't that sound intriguing? And the person that she's writing about is pretty famous. I mean, he's done some amazing work. So I can't wait for you to tell everybody all about it. Welcome, welcome, Gail.
Thank you very much for having me, Karen. I appreciate it.
I am so glad that you're here. So we usually start with book recommendations. So I wonder if you could tell us something that you've read in the last year or so that we could recommend to our audience.
Okay. I read a lot of different genres. Right now, I'm listening to an audiobook by probably my favorite author is Stephen King. And I don't like so much, I don't like um, the monsters and the ghosts and things like that. But I just think he writes such well-developed characters in unique and unusual situations, great dialogue. I think he's just the master. So I'm listening to 11/22/63, and this.
Loved that book.
Did you? Okay, because I've heard mixed from people, but I figured it's Stephen King. I have to give him a try, and I'm so intrigued by the whole, all the research he did and the way this character just develops, and he goes back in time to prevent the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And I'm thinking, is he going to do it? Is this actually going to happen? And what will that alternate reality be? So it's great because it's Stephen King, but it's also a little bit, it's certainly historical and, 50 years ago. So very, very enjoyable.
Yes, I love time travel books anyway. I think that time travel books are always a little intriguing, how people do it. And I wasn't a big Stephen King fan, and I loved that book. It was so well written. Do you have another recommendation?
Well, I don't think you can go. I like Beachy reads also. As much as I like some of the suspenseful thrillers, then I like something light and frothy. And to me, the queen of summertime reads is Elin Hilderbrand. All of her novels are based in Nantucket, which can't beat that in terms of a great
beach there.
It's a great beach, and she just does like so much with coming up with new storylines. One of them was these identical twins. One lived on Nantucket and one lived on Martha's Vineyard. And they were kind of, estranged, but trying to get back together. And these, 2 twins on these 2 beautiful islands off the coast of Massachusetts. I don't know where she comes up with them. I actually met her. And she did a writer's, not a writer's, a reader's getaway on Nantucket. And a girlfriend of mine and I a few years ago said, well, let's go. And we went in the middle of January and met Elin. She did some readings, some activities. It was so much fun. And she was delightful, just really down to earth, very creative, and was interested in what I was writing. So
that was nice, wasn't it?
Yes.
That she was interested in you. I had a very embarrassing meeting with a famous author. I met Toni Morrison.
Okay.
And we were waiting online to shake her hand, and she was signing books and say a little something. And I went up to her and I said, "Oh my goodness, I'm just so glad to meet you. Oh, oh my gosh, I love everything." And she's looking at me.
Are you okay?
And I wasn't 19. I was a grown woman.
Oh, okay. All right. So you want, yeah, true. But when you meet that person that you're a fan of, you just react the way you react. It's
I'm waiting for somebody to react to both of us like that.
I know, right?
Wouldn't that be cool?
That'd be wonderful.
So tell us about, first of all, just give us a sense of your first 4 books, just a brief
Sure.
about what kind of books you were writing first, and then how this new one came about.
Okay. Well, I have written 4 books, as we've said. They're all contemporary fiction. Strong element of romance, although it was more about the theme that I always fall back on is second chances, starting over, happy ever after, even after a few false starts or whatever. And so my 4 books all have that as a kind of as a background theme. And when I found a little bit about this story about Frederick Law Olmsted, and certainly I knew of him. My husband and he are distant cousins. They somewhere way back when their grandfathers were brothers, so technically they're cousins. Although of course my husband was born 150 years after he died, or after he was born, so not even close. But when I found the story, like I said, his work was always interesting to me. I visited a number of his parks, and I thought, oh, what an interesting man, and how special that is. And then I read how he married his late brother's widow, adopted her 3 children, and together they had 4 more, and they were married for 44 years. And I thought, that's a story I'd like to read, because although it was fairly common back then, it's a levirate marriage, it's called a marriage of convenience, where the interest is in keeping the family name intact, any family money, the estate, the children, to protect for the future. So it was fairly common. But I just thought, wow, just what would that have been like for her? So the story is written from Mary's perspective. I wrote it in the first person. I tend to write in the first person. A couple of my books are third person narratives, but something about the first person just rings true to me. I feel so much more connected to the characters. So I started doing a ton of research on their lives, on how his career bloomed, because he was a late starter. He was 40 years old before he got married and before he started designing Central Park, and that was his first park. He had been a magazine editor, a newspaper reporter, a merchant seaman, a gentleman farmer, and a retail clerk in a dry goods store. So technically he had been all over the map. And right about the time that he and Mary got together, and like I said, his brother died the year before, he felt that he needed to protect her. And he liked her. He thought she was, fine, but had no romantic feelings towards her at the time. But of course, since at the heart, my heart, I'm a true romantic. So I pictured them kind of, learning how to connect with each other, how to grow together. And I felt that she became his, not his muse, I don't like that term, but more his support, kept things going for him. He bounced ideas off of her. That was very, very clear from my research. And I think she had not necessarily a creative aspect, but she could organize it. At any one time, the firm had like 50 different projects going. So and he was a very unpractical person, impractical. He never sent out invoices. He never collected earnest money up front. It was a mess
He
when it came
needed
to,
her.
he needed her. So I wanted to make her, more than just his cheerleader and, kind of the office manager, but really is his partner in all the work that they did together.
So how do you describe, and I'm asking this actually from a very personal point of view. I'm writing at the moment my grandmother's memoir. She's dead, and I'm writing it as if I'm her, first person.
Mhm.
And so I'm making up stuff, even though I have tons of research and, but I have to make up so much of the story. So how do you describe it so that when the reader realizes that this is fiction, but it's based on real lives? What do you say?
Well, I tried to be very, very clear in the introduction, before they actually start reading, that this is a novel, it is a work of fiction, that these are real people and real life situations, but that I imagined most of the dialogue, most of the correspondence between them. I had some things to go on, but I did take some license with that. And then at the end of the book, I was really, I hope I was clear enough for people. I said, here is what is true. Here is where I took the most creative license, and tried, because historical fiction fans, they love a good story and they want to know more about the time and what was going on. So I think from my experience, what I did, I just tried to figure out, I had pictures of clothing, of women's clothing in the 1860s, 1870s. I had, menus drawn out, what they would be eating, what their, house would look like, how they would travel. And the more I got in, the more I felt connected with the character. It just, I would hear something, writing dialogue, and then I think, no, Mary would never say that. Fred might say that, but Mary would never say
It
that. So
would.
it you just get to know these people that you've created, but instead of out of nothing, you've created them out of a real person.
Yes,
So I took that
that's a great
responsibility. Yeah,
It's a
I
great
took it very, very
description
seriously.
because number one, your characters really are real. They're people, they're whole flesh, whether you made them up out of whole cloth or they're historical figures, they're really alive. And so I love that Mary would never say that and she wouldn't wear that. I think that's great. Could you read a short excerpt for our audience?
Sure. Let's see, I found it on my computer. Let me just make sure that I can find it on my
Okay, you could show us you show everyone your
this is
cover,
my
your beautiful
preview
cover.
book. My son took this picture in Central Park. This is the Bogartus Bridge, and he photoshopped in 2 swans for me, because the day we were there were no swans, and I said, no, there's got to be swans. So he
Perfect. It's beautiful. It's a
did
beautiful
that for
cover.
me. But yeah, so this is the cover. I'm very, very, very happy with it. I felt, I wanted to add people, but book covers are funny. If it's an older couple, I didn't want them. At first I had like an older, man and woman sitting like on a park bench, and then I thought, it just looked depressing. It looks sad. Like, what? Why are they on the park bench? Why is nobody with them? And it's hard to, I don't want to create a false impression by having a romantic couple hugging and kissing on the cover either, because again, he was 40 when they got married, and he was not in love with her. He fell in love with her over
Yeah,
time.
but Central Park is perfect. That's
But
perfect.
so that's what I wanted
Yeah. All
that's
right.
to do. Okay. So this is early on in the book. Mary comes home from England with her 3 young children after her husband dies, and is really at a loss. She has a small amount of money coming in from her grandfather's estate, but really not enough money to live on. And the last part of the prologue, she says, "I'll ask Fred. Fred will know what to do," because he's her late husband's older brother, more worldly, knows a lot of people.
Yeah.
So she's going to ask Fred. And then fast forward a year later, now they're getting married. So this is Mary kind of at the marriage ceremony, waiting to be kind of, beckoned to walk down the aisle by herself. So it starts out, I'll just start here. Shortly after meeting Fred for the first time, I had overheard him confiding to a friend that Mary was just the thing for a rainy day, not to fall in love with, but to talk to. At the time, his words had meant very little to me, as I was in love with his younger brother. But everything had changed since then. So I had begun to imagine a future with Fred and was thrilled when he asked me to marry him, or rather stated he was of the opinion we should get married, to which I agreed. Marriage was an opportunity to provide stability for my family. But could it also be a second chance for me to live my happy ever after? I hope so. But I didn't fool myself with the hopes of a passionate union. Fred's love for me was more like that of an older brother, not a besotted bridegroom. He was 37 years old, never married, and his engagement to Miss Emily Perkins had ended several years ago. All of his previous romantic relationships had been short-lived, and many in our social circle had assumed Fred would be a lifelong bachelor. And now he was marrying me, a widow with 3 small children.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful. I feel like I already know Mary, and I'm rooting for her.
At her heart, she was a very, everything I have been able to find, she was a very practical person. She would do what it took. I saw her as a good sport, as somebody who would go along, whatever it took for her children to be safe, to be, in a stable, situation. And Fred was very clearly in love with the children from the beginning. And they would run to him at the, because he came to visit her at night after he'd get out of work. He found her an apartment to live in that was a little bit less expensive, and was helping her out. And he'd show up at the end of the day, and the children would run to him, and he'd reach in his coat pockets and have little trinkets and little things. And and then, one day they just were talking, and again, he said, I think we should get married.
Yeah. That's such an important thing, that if you're going to marry when you have children, you need that man to love your children.
Yes.
It's everything. So that's so beautiful. If our audience wanted to find all about you, find you on social media, look at your previous books, as well as, I think this book is now ready for pre-order, isn't it?
It is ready for pre-order, yes.
Yes, on Amazon, and yes, aren't we both excited about that? Mine too. Tangled Lies is ready for pre-order as well. So July is going to be a good month for both of us.
Yes, definitely.
Tell our audience how they can find you.
The easiest way probably is my website is Gail, Gail, Olmsted, OLMSTED.com. That's going to bring you to a description of the books. And if everything is working, there should be buy links for the first 4 books to buy them on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. And then with the new book, to pre-order it. So yeah, it is exciting, isn't it?
It is exciting. Yes, yes, yes. Well, thank you so much, Gail. Thank you for being a part of this. And both of us want to thank you for listening and watching. And I hope I will see you for the next episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing?
Thanks, Karen.